So today we are going to learn about HTML tables. HTML tables allow web developers to arrange data into rows and columns. A table in HTML consists of table cells inside rows and columns. Let us write an example of what we mean. We'll open a new file and we will call it table.html. Hit on enter, and then we'll write our HTML boilerplate. In our title, we will write table, and we are going to insert our table inside our body element. Let us give it a heading. TD elements define table cells, and we begin our table with opening and our closing tag. Let us go ahead and write our table. We begin with our table, and inside our table we are going to begin with table row. After we have our table row, we are going to have our table data with TD, and then we'll have our names here. You can insert any name of your choice. Table data, then have John and Jane. Table data TD, close, and we have John and Jane and Sarah. Let us style our table. In our style.css, let us go ahead and style our table. We're going to have our table, and then our table header. We're going to have our table header, and our table data. Come here, we say table, comma, table header, comma, and table data. Open and close parenthesis, and we say border. Let us just have a border of 1 pixels, solid black. This just to help you to display. This is going to help us display our table that we want it. Let us style our table here. Let us style our table and give it a width. This is very small, so let us give it a width of around 100%, so that it may be distributed accordingly. And here we have it. Now, to understand the example better, we have added borders to the table. Now, each table cell is defined by a table data. TD stands for table data, all right? Everything between the opening table data and the closing table data are the content of the table cell. These ones here, these ones are the content of the table cells. Okay, each table row starts with a tr and ends with a tr, with a closing, with an opening and closing tag. Okay, and so we have said tr stands for table row. We can go ahead and add 2 table rows. We have this, the first table row. We can have another table row here. Go ahead and insert this table row. The first table data, let us have 16. Another table data, let's have 14. And the other table data, let us have 40. We have added another row. This is a row and this is another row. You can have as many rows as you like in a table. Just make sure that the number of cells are the same in each row. Okay, like you can't have here, this row has 3 cells and then the next row has 2 cells. They have to be matching cells. Okay, the next thing we are going to look at are what we call table headers. Sometimes you want your cells to be table header cells. In those cases, use the table header tag instead of the table data tag. Where we want to have a table header, we use a th tag. Okay, let the first row be table header cells. Add another table row so that we can add our headers. Go ahead and write table header, which is th, and we say person 1. Go ahead and then add another table header and say person 2. Let's go ahead and add another table header. You'll say person 3. Okay, so in our table now, we have what we call our table header. We have now our heading in our table, and then we have our table data in every cell. Okay, by default, the text in the table header elements are bold and are centered, but you can change that with CSS. The other thing we are going to look at is what we call HTML table borders. HTML tables can have borders of different styles and shapes. How do we add a border? To add a border, use the CSS border property on a table header, and a table and a TD element, or a table data element, as we have done in our style. In our styling here, in our CSS style, we have our table header, our table data, and we styled it with border. We gave it a border of 1 pixels and of solid color black. To avoid having double borders like what we have in our browser, we say border collapse, border collapse, and we write collapse so that we don't have double borders. We now have a single border. We can go ahead and style our table borders. If you set a background color of each cell and give the border a white color, the same as the document background, you get the impression of an invisible border. We want to set a background color for our table header and our table data. Okay, we come here and we say background color. This background color, just go ahead and copy. Let us give our border color white. Let us, instead of solid black, let us give it a solid white. And now our table has a background color which is invisible. It has an invisible border. It has an impression of an invisible border. Okay, we can go ahead and style also our table to have round borders. Having round borders, what we are going to use is what we call a border radius property. The borders get rounded. These ones here, they get rounded. Now we have a rounded corners. Okay, add border radius, and in our border radius, let us give it 10 pixels. We can continue styling our table, and we can add another property that is a dotted property, which is we can say dotted table borders. With the border style property, you can set the appearance of the border. The following values are allowed. We have like border style, in our table header here, we can come and say border. We want a style for our border, so we'll say border, and we have style here, border style, and we have all these values here. We have dashed, we have dotted, we have double, groove, hidden. Why don't we go ahead and click on dotted and see what will happen to our, we can comment this so that we'll be able to view very well, and return this to solid black. And you can see we now have the dotted lines, and our outer border is solid black. You can either include it, like if we remove this from here and bring it here, they will all be dotted, because now we have our table header, and our table data. But let us have a solid black on our table, and have our table header and our table data with the dotted lines. You can go ahead and do the exercises with the other values and see how they will appear. The other thing we can look at is what we call border color. With border color property, you can set the color of the border. Like the way we had set the background color, now we can set the border color. How are we going to go about it? In our table header data, in our table header and table data, let us go ahead and write border color, and we give it the same color we had here. Remove that. I don't know if it is visible enough, but you'll be able to see in your browser we have a very light blue color. Okay, I can remove this dotted. Let us comment it out so that you are able to see the colors here. Okay, the next thing we are going to look at is what we call HTML table sizes. HTML tables can have different sizes for each column, row, or the entire table. Okay, use the style attribute with the width or height properties to specify the size of a table, row, or column that you want. Let us go ahead and set the width of a table. Add the style attribute to the table element. Okay, let us go ahead and style our table here. To set the size of a specific column, add the style attribute on a table header or a table data element. Inside our table row and our table header, let us go ahead and give it a style. You can style this and say style. Let us give it the width of 70%. You can see that now our first table header has taken the width of 70%, and we had said our table width is 100%. So the rest of the columns, the rest of the two columns, they are sharing the 30%, 15 and 15 and 15%. We can change the table row height. We can go to the table row, and to a certain row, to this particular row, let us go ahead and style the width and say style equals height, not the width. Now we want to change the height. We are going to say height equals to 200 pixels. And there you have it. HTML tables can have headers for each column or row, or for many columns and rows. Let us look at HTML table headers. Table headers are defined with TH element. Each TH element represents a table cell. We have vertical table headers. To use the first column as table headers, define the first cell in each row as table headers, vertical. To define that, we are going to remove this one here. And inside our table row, we'll remove also this. Inside our table row, let us go ahead and have our table header and call it first name. Call it first name. Inside our table data, let us have Sarah. Inside our second table data, let us have Lucy. We'll remove this style here. On our next table row, we are going to rename this as our last name, and it is supposed to be our table header, not our table data. Okay. Table name, we are going to, inside our table row, table header, table data, to table data, last name, and then we close table row, and then we call this table header and this table header, and let us say this is age. Okay, this first column becomes table headers. If you set the first table cell in each table row to a table header element, so this one becomes the table header. Okay, and you realize that by default table headers are bold and they are centered. So how do we move them to the left? What we do is that we align these elements to the left using the CSS text align property. We go to our CSS file, and in our table header, we are going to now write table header, open and close parentheses, and say text align, and we say left. Let them align to the left, and they are now aligned to the left. Okay. The next thing we are going to look at is what we call table caption. You can add a caption that serves as a heading for the entire table. Okay, let us go ahead and work on that. On our table file, we are going to comment on this table that we have here and comment on the table header here. And let us write another, let us have another table. Inside our body, let us have table, and let us give it the style. We give it a width, just like we had done, width of 100%. And inside our table, go ahead and write caption and close. Say monthly savings. Monthly savings. Now, monthly savings is going to be the heading of our table. Now, go ahead and let us write our table row. Inside the table row, we are going to have table heading. Our table header is going to be month. Inside the month, we are going to have another table header. Let us call it savings. And we close that table row. Let us start another table row, and inside it, let us have table data. And this table data, let us call it, we are in the month of February, so let us say February. In the month of February, table data, we have like 50,000 Kenya shillings. You can see that now the caption tag is inserted immediately after the table tag, okay? The next thing we are going to look at is what we call HTML table padding and spacing. HTML tables can adjust the padding inside the cells and also the space between the cells. Let us look at HTML table padding and spacing. Cell padding is the space between the cell edges and the cell content. By default, the padding is set to 0. To add padding on table cells, use the CSS padding property. Let us go to our CSS style. Inside our table header and table data, we'll go ahead and add here, we say padding equals to 15 pixels. Okay, you see? Now it has created the space between the cells edges. The padding is the space between the cells. To add padding only above the content, use the padding top property. We'll remove this padding and say padding top, we say 10 pixels. Then we can go ahead and say padding bottom 20 pixels. We can go ahead and say padding, not there, in pixels. Say padding padding left. Yeah, padding left, say 30 pixels. Then we can say padding right. Padding right, we say 40 pixels. The next thing we're going to look at is HTML table cell spacing. Cell spacing is the space between each cell. Between this cell and between this cell is the space between each cell. By default, the space is set to 2 pixels. To change the space between table cells, use the CSS spacing property on the table element. Okay, we come here and say table, open and closing. We say border spacing equals to 30 pixel. Okay, you can now see the effect that it has on our table. We still haven't seen any changes because of this border collapse. Let us comment it out. And now you are able to see that the cell spacing is the space between each cell. The last thing we are going to look at is what we call HTML table styling. HTML table styling use CSS to make your tables look better. HTML table, they have what we call zebra stripes. If you add a background color on every other table row, you will get a nice zebra stripes effect. To set every other table row element, use the 9th child event selector like this. Okay, let us just use this. Let's go ahead and use this table that we had here. In our style.css file, we are going to change a few things. We are going to change a few things. We want to have a background color, but we need to remove all these other styles that we've written. So I'll go ahead and comment. I've commented most of our table of our table styles, and let's have 3 table headers. We have first name, let's have last name, and last name, and then let's have what? Let's have points. Let's have points. Let's remove this and add 2 more. Remove table header, and let's have 2 more. So we are going to have John. First name is John. Let's call it John. Let's say John Kamau. John Kamau has 400 points. Okay. Then we are going to have Sarah. Last name is Wanyeki, who is going to have 200 points. Okay. And then let us copy this and have another layer and another one here. We're going to have Lucy, and we're going to have Njoroge, and this Njoroge is going to have 800 points. Then we are going to have let us have Peter Carlos, who is going to have 100 points. If you look at our table, now we have the zebra striped table. We've come to the end of today's session. Go ahead and practice everything that we have learned today about HTML tables. Go ahead and insert those borders, the sizes, the headers, the padding and the spacing of our tables, and the table styling. Don't forget to like this page, to subscribe, and also to bring other friends and study along with you in this journey of web development. Thank you and have a nice time.